Well, welcome back there, boys and girls. Today we're going to talk about Activity 4.1c as our notes. In the process of doing some of it here, showing you how to do it, I'm also going to be explaining you how to do some other things as well. In this, it says record the number of cubes and weight of each your puzzle pieces. The 2-piece part and a 3-piece puzzle part. Up at the scale, I know you guys didn't have any 2 or 3-piece puzzle parts, but there's going to be a 2-piece and a 3-piece puzzle part that you guys will also weigh, and it's going to help make the graph look a little better. So let's say this is red. Whatever color they are, I'm just making colors up here right now. Your colors, you may have to look at yours, your drawings, because you may not have colors for it yet. Yellow, black, maybe I've got a gray one. Maybe I've got red 2, meaning this is my second red one because I happen to have a red one before I even saw the 2-piece one. And let's say we have an orange one. Alright, now these are the 2 pieces that I'm providing for you. Your guys' puzzle piece will have 5 of its own. So you'll have these 5 puzzle pieces here that you need to get, that you also need to take the mass of, or the weight of. Actually it's mass and grams, not really weight, but anyways. Let's say this is a 4. Let's say you had 2 4s, a 5, and a 6 and a 6. Alright, then the weights, let's say that this right here was like 10.1, 15.4. Let's say this right here was 20.0 grams, and I'm just simply making these up. Maybe this one was 19.8. Let's say this here was 24.8. Let's say this was 29.7, and let's say this right here was 30.2. So that right there is my 7 masses here. So what it says next is to use Excel to create a scatter plot of your data and insert a trend line. Well, let's show you how to use Excel and create that scatter plot to make a trend line. Okay, so got a lot of stuff we're going to have to do here. First of all, I've got to take this information and I've got to put it in there. I'm going to take basically this now, and what's nice is I can simply copy it and I've got to paste it in there. Alright, so what are we going to do now? Well, I'm going to go up here to insert. I'm going to go over here to the one that says Scatterplot. Do not make a line graph. Line graphs on Excel are not what you think they are. We want to make a Scatterplot. Notice that I clicked the ones that didn't have, oh, we got to do this again. Okay, I'm going to highlight. What I forgot to do was highlight my information. I'm going to go to insert, and I'm going to click on the ones that I don't want lines drawn. I'm going to put my own best fit line in there. Well, now that I have this done, a few things that we've got to do. I'm going to click up here, it says chart title, and what this is this is weight versus mass. It's important that you put that in that order because we want it to be y-axis, which is the weights, versus the x-axis, which is the mass of it. Well, it's not mass, sorry. Weight versus number of cubes. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Alright, now a lot of stuff you're going to do from here. We're going to hit the plus button over here. I'm going to add axes titles. So this right here is the number of cubes. This over here. This right here is the weight, and I'm going to put G there, little g for grams. Now I click on the graph again, and it gives me my plus sign. Next I'm going to go here to trend line. I'm going to hit the arrow over here where it says more options. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to display equation on chart. What that automatically does now is it puts the trend line on here, and it gives me an equation. We'll get to the equation here pretty quick. So for the most part, we've done most everything. Input the data in the tabular form. That's when I copied it. That's when I copied it. You saw me copy it and then paste it right into Excel. Create a scatter plot of the data. Format the axes, label the axes, and title the chart as shown below. We've done that. Add a linear trend line and format the trend line to forecast backward to 0 cubes and forward to 12 cubes. Alright, so this is what we've got to do now. This is what I'm going to attack. That part right there. We want it to go back to 0. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going down here to this trend line, more options. And notice I want it to go backward. Well, here's 1, 2. I want it to go backwards 2 more spots. And then I'm going to go up here and I want it to go forward to 12. Well, it stops at 6. So I got to go forward 6 more. Now it's going out here to 12. So my graph now is going from 0 to 12. What this does now is you can set what you want it to be. So I know what the next thing, one of the next thing tells me then is to insert this into the Word document. So what I've done is I've just simply clicked on the graph. I'm going to click copy. I'm going to go right here. And there's my graph. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a little smaller. Alright, so I've got my graph in there. Display the equation of the trend line on the chart. So we've done that. Here's my graph. Now, using the equation of the trend line to answer the following. Rewrite the equation of the trend line using function notation. Mn represents the mass and n represents the number of cubes. Well, this at first might sound difficult. N represents the number of cubes. The number of cubes is on the x-axis. So I'm going to put n in for where there's an x. Right here is my equation. So right there where the x is, I'm going to change it to n. I'm going to put mn, alright, represents the mass. Well, the mass or the weight is on the y-axis. So I'm going to put m, n, just like that. Alright. Alright. And you could type it here as well. That's m, n equals, and what is it up here? 4.9255. 4.2955 n, and then it's going to be plus or minus plus 0.3191. Alright, so there we've done that part. What is the domain of function? That is, what values of n make sense? Well, n is the number of cubes. Can I have negative number of cubes? Of course not. You can have 0 cubes and you can have positive cubes. So the number of cubes has to be 0 or greater. So what I'm going to say here is that x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So that's what we're saying here. What is the range of the function? The range is what values can the weight be? Well, again, can I have negative weight? Basically is what we're asking ourselves. All right. The range is the y values. Could I have a negative weight? No. I could have positive weight and I could have 0. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it here, except range doesn't deal with the x, range deals with the y. So I'm going to change it to y here. Domain is x, range is y. What is the slope of your trend line? Explain the interpretation of the slope in words. Well, this right here, the thing that used to be in front of the x, right up here, the 4.9255. Alright, that right there, which used to be in front of the x but now is in front of the n, that's my slope. Why? Because y equals mx plus b. This is the y, this is the m, the n is the x. So the m is the slope. I'm going to say m equals 4.2955 and explain the interpretation right here. Explain the interpretation of the slope in words. Well, the slope for this equation tells, well, n is the mass, all right? So what this is telling us is the slope is telling us how the mass, or n is the number of cubes, I'll get this right. All right, so the slope is telling us, slope is y-axis over x-axis. So what it's telling us is how the mass or the weight is changing per cube. All right, and what it's telling us is it's gaining 4.2955 grams per cube. All right, so the slope for this tells us the change in mass for each additional cube, right? And what that is it's 4.2955 grams per cube. That is 4.2955 grams per cube, right? So if we had 2 cubes, I would take 4.2955 times 2, and that would give us about 8.5 or 8.6 grams. If we had 3 cubes, you're talking about 12, 13, probably right around 13 grams. So we're just going to take this basically, and that's why it's got an n here. N for the number of cubes. You multiply it by the number of cubes you have. How does the slope of your best compare to the slope of the trend line? Well, this is a positive number. All right. If I look at my slope here, here's a positive correlation. So I would say they are both positive and correlate well. You don't have to use the exact same words I do. Predict the mass of the puzzle piece that is comprised of 9 wooden cubes. All right. You've got 2 ways to do this. 2 ways, people. A, I could come up here to the graph and I could go to where 9 is on the x-axis. 9, and then if I take this straight over on the y-axis, I would estimate it's going to be about 45 grams. All right, so that's the first way. First of all, go to the x-axis to the number where 9 is at on the x-axis. Go up, go over, and I would estimate 9 is going to be about 45 grams. So, graphically, I'm going to say 45 grams. There is another way you could do this. All right, I'm going to take my equation up here. And this equation is also used to find the mass. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say the mass is equal to 4.2955 times, well, what am I putting in for n? They're telling me to put 9 in for n. So I'm going to take 4.2955 times 9, and I'm going to add to it 3191. That's what the equation is telling me to do. I had to make a slight alteration here. I noticed that I was saying 4.29. If you go back up to the graph, the slope is actually 4.9255. So I made that fix all the way through here. And what we find out then is that the equation tells me it's going to be about 44.6 grams. So there's the graphical way, and then there is looking at your equation. If a puzzle piece has a mass of 31.5 grams, how many wooden cubes would you predict were used to create the puzzle piece? Show your work. This is going to be the last one I do here for you. I would use my same equation. I'm probably going to have to fix it here. puzzle piece had a mass. Alright, so what I'm going to do here then is it's telling me now that's the mass. This is not the number of grams. This is the weight. I would put 31.5 over here, and then you could solve it. Okay, two ways you could do this. A, you could solve it graphically, and you get 6.3. Well, you can't have 6.3 cubes. So what does this mean? Right? It means you have to say you have to have 6 or 7. Well, what I'm going to say here for right now is I'm going to round it up, right, and say they must have had 7 cubes. Some of you might round it down and say there's 6 cubes, and that's kind of a choice. The other way, again, is to go over here to 31. Well, 31 would be right about here, and if I took that down, that would be 6 cubes. This is looking at the graph. How did I know to go to the y-axis? Because it's talking about weight. It's talking about the mass. So I went to about where 31 would be and took it straight over until I hit the trend line and went down. I'm going to be less than 7, but more than 6. So somewhere between there, between 6 and 7 cubes. Well, hey, I hope this was beneficial.